The meeting was titled 5-Year Expansion Strategy. I was the one who requested it. 3 weeks earlier, I had finished building a full-scale expansion model, new routing systems, predictive demand forecasting, margin restructuring across 3 additional states, 42 slides, data, projections, risk analysis. I thought this would be the day my role became official. Instead, I walked into a room where my presentation wasn't even loaded. The screen already displayed the opening slide, but it wasn't mine. It read, Operational Leadership Transition. Leadership transition. My stomach tightened. My father sat at the head of the table. My younger brother sat to his right, and to his left, a man I had never seen before. Gray suit, polished shoes, the posture of someone who had already been briefed. I took my seat. No one asked about my slides. No one asked if I was ready. That was the first confirmation. My father began speaking without looking at me. The company is entering a new phase of growth. He clicked to the next slide. To scale properly, we need a more professional leadership structure. Professional. We've decided to appoint David Carter as Chief Operating Officer. Chief Operating Officer. My title. No interim. No co-lead. Appoint. David nodded calmly. Looking forward to working with you, he said, extending his hand slightly. Working with me. I looked at my brother. He avoided eye contact. That told me everything. I spoke evenly. So what is my role now? Silence. 3 full seconds. My brother answered instead of my father. You will continue overseeing systems and technical infrastructure, but all strategic decisions will go through David. So I would report to a stranger in the company I built. I started in the warehouse at 14. While my brother toured college campuses, I learned how to load trucks. While he studied business theory in Boston, I slept on the office couch rewriting dispatch algorithms. When fuel costs spiked 30% and we nearly collapsed, my optimization model saved over $1 million in 1 year. When our largest client threatened to leave, I rebuilt our routing system in 72 hours. But in that room, none of that existed because credentials look better on paper than sacrifice. I asked my father directly, "Do you believe I'm replaceable?" He didn't answer immediately. My brother did. In business, everyone is. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it landed clean because that wasn't a competitor speaking. That was blood. I stood up. No argument, no numbers, no reminders of the years I'd invested. Just one word. Okay. David stood and extended his hand fully this time. I shook it. He squeezed hard, the grip of someone who believed he'd just secured power. He didn't know the system running this company was written in code under my name. And ownership doesn't disappear just because a title does. 2 hours later, I sent a single email. I am formally resigning from the position of COO, effective immediately. No thank you. No explanation. I walked out of the building. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't look back. They thought they had replaced me. What they didn't realize was simple. The company didn't run on titles. It ran on systems. And the system was never truly theirs. People think the story began in that meeting. It didn't. It began when I was 14. My family never officially said there was a golden child. They didn't need to. My younger brother, Min, was always the future of the company. I was the practical one. When I turned 14, my father took me to the warehouse. "A firstborn needs to learn real work," he said. When Min turned 14, my father took him on a campus tour overseas. "He needs vision. Same house, same parents. Two completely different futures being designed." I started by labeling boxes, counting inventory manually, stacking pallets in freezing storage at 3 a.m. Min learned how to present. He studied business strategy. He read leadership books. He practiced speaking in front of mirrors. I studied shipping invoices. No one physically forced me to stay. But every time I mentioned college, my father would say, "The company needs you here." When Min mentioned graduate school, "The company will be his one day." When I was 19, I began teaching myself programming. No one asked me to. I was just tired of watching our inventory system fail every month. We were losing tens of thousands of dollars because of errors. So after work, I downloaded tutorials, taught myself Python, spent 8 months building the company's first internal inventory management software. No one knew what I was doing after hours. The day I installed it on our servers, loss rates dropped 60% in the first quarter. At the next leadership meeting, my father announced, "Min proposed improvements to our internal systems." Min nodded. I stayed silent. That was the first time I understood something clearly. Effort and recognition don't always travel together. 3 years later, fuel prices spiked nearly 30%. Our routing structure was bleeding money. My father panicked. Min suggested cutting staff. I suggested rewriting the routing algorithm entirely. I worked 72 hours straight, rebuilt dispatch logic, optimized mileage per shipment, reduced dead routes. The following quarter, we saved over $1 million. The financial report credited leadership restructuring strategy. No individual names, just leadership. Min was interning in New York at the time. When Min graduated with his MBA, my father threw a large party. Friends, partners, investors. He raised a glass and said, "This is the man who will lead our company into the next era." I was technically still COO, but in that room, I was invisible. I was the operator, not the visionary. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my office. I looked at the servers, the code, the systems I had written from scratch, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. If I walked away, would they even know what I had built? My family's mistake wasn't underestimating me. It was assuming I would always be there, always fixing errors, always optimizing quietly, always stepping in before disaster became visible. They confused silence with dependence. They thought because I never demanded credit, I never had leverage. By the time they told me I was replaceable, I wasn't angry. I was aware. They didn't understand what they actually owned. And more importantly, what they didn't. They always believed the company belonged to them. The business license was under my father's name. The shares were divided within the family. Contracts were signed with my brother's signature. On paper, that was true. But there was one question they never asked. Who owned the system that actually ran the company? When I was 22, after our first major operational failure, I made a decision. I would never build anything critical again without protecting it. Not because I was greedy, but because I had begun to understand my place in the family. I wasn't the one who would be credited, so I needed to be the one who was secured. When I rewrote the second version of our routing software, I registered the source code under my personal name. No one noticed. They trusted me, and in their minds, I was just the technical guy. The company had internal servers, but the core system ran on a separate cloud account, registered under my personal email, paid monthly from my own bank account, for 8 years. No one asked, because it always worked, always stable, always accurate. They didn't care who owned it. They only cared that it functioned. 3 years ago, when Min officially became Director of Strategy, he required all senior staff to sign updated employment contracts. The contract included a clause: any intellectual property developed during employment belongs to the company. I read it carefully, very carefully, and I noticed something. The core system had been written before that contract ever existed, and subsequent updates were categorized as maintenance, not as newly commissioned company development. I signed the contract, but I never transferred ownership. They didn't catch it, because they never imagined I would need it. Their mistake wasn't removing me from the meeting. Their mistake was never auditing what actually powered the company. They never asked, who holds administrator access? Who controls root server credentials? Who can restructure the database if it collapses? The answer was always me, and I never abused that position, never threatened, never mentioned it, because I believed family wasn't a place where you needed defense. I was wrong. After the leadership transition meeting, I returned to my office one last time. I opened my laptop, logged into the cloud dashboard. 12 years of work sat in front of me. Every line of code familiar. I didn't delete anything. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply exported a complete backup of the source code to a private drive. Then I changed one thing. I adjusted the authentication structure. The system would continue running, but any major structural changes would now require approval from the primary owner account. That account was mine. I didn't break any laws. I simply activated my rights. 2 hours after sending my resignation email, Min texted me, "Don't overreact. You're still part of the family." Family. I stared at the message and didn't respond. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. I wasn't part of the company. The company was part of me, and they still didn't understand that. The first 48 hours after I left, nothing happened, and that was the problem. The system was still running. Orders were still being processed. Confirmation emails were still sent on time. Min probably smiled in the Monday meeting. "See, everything's stable." David, the new COO, likely presented a confident update about a smooth leadership transition. They thought I had been cosmetic, replaceable, a name that could be erased without consequence. The first issue appeared on Friday. Small, one shipping route calculated incorrectly, a 12% fuel variance. Not catastrophic, but then another route miscalculated, then 3. Then warehouse allocations began assigning inventory to the wrong distribution centers. Nothing dramatic, just hairline fractures. And the most dangerous thing about a complex system is when it fails slowly. David requested access to the core architecture to optimize efficiency. The system prompted for owner-level authentication. He didn't have it. Min contacted internal IT. They were confused. No one had ever needed that level of access before. They tried resets, nothing. They tried override credentials, denied. The system was still functioning, but they couldn't modify anything structural. I heard about it from a former warehouse manager. "It's minor," Min reportedly said. "We're adjusting." David assured everyone, "There's nothing to worry about, just fine-tuning." Fine-tuning. But optimization doesn't work when you don't understand the foundation. 3 weeks in, our largest client sent a formal warning. 4 delayed shipments in 1 month. They demanded explanation. Min personally responded. David promised to refine system performance. They didn't understand something crucial. The system wasn't something you refined casually. It was an ecosystem. And ecosystems don't respond well to outsiders pulling at roots they can't see. The call came Tuesday night. "Min." I watched it ring, let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, my father called. I answered, not because I needed to, because I wanted to hear it. "There are a few minor issues," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Could you log in remotely and take a look?" Take a look. "Am I still head of operations?" I asked calmly. Silence. "We're family," he replied. I answered softly. "In business, everyone is replaceable." He didn't respond. The line went quiet. Then it ended. Data latency began creeping in. Not a crash, just slower processing. In logistics, slow is lethal. One $4 million contract was temporarily suspended pending performance review. Competitors began underbidding. Min demanded explanations from David. David demanded full system access, but access didn't belong to them. It never had. I didn't delete data. I didn't shut down servers. I didn't break laws. I simply stopped fixing problems. And sometimes, withholding rescue is more powerful than destruction. By the end of the first month, they began to understand something. I wasn't an employee. I was the architect. And when the architect leaves, the building may still stand. But no one inside knows how to keep it from collapsing. By the second month after I left, it was no longer minor issues. It became numbers, and numbers don't lie. Our largest client officially froze their contract, $4 million per year. The email was clear: operational performance instability. Min tried negotiating. David tried explaining. But when a system can't be optimized, promises mean nothing. Within a single quarter, the company lost 22% of its revenue. I heard about it from someone still inside. For the first time, Min's voice wasn't steady. "We need full access to the system," David added. "We can't operate without control of the core architecture." IT responded. "The highest level admin account is tied to a personal email. That email belonged to me. That email..." This time, it wasn't Min. It wasn't my father. It was the company's lawyer. His tone was polite. "We believe there may be a misunderstanding regarding system ownership." A misunderstanding. I informed him that all further communication should go through my attorney. The tone shifted immediately. No more family, only intellectual property. A week later, my former company received official notice from my legal counsel. The letter was brief. 1. The routing and inventory management systems are registered intellectual property under my personal name. 2. Any structural system access requires written authorization from the owner. 3. If the company wishes to acquire full ownership rights, formal negotiations may begin. No threats, no emotion, just law. My initial valuation, $6.2 million. Min called me the same day. "Are you insane?" I answered calmly. "No, that's the market value of 12 years of uncompensated work." He was silent for several seconds. "You're killing the company," I replied. "No, I'm pricing it." My father came to my house, no warning. He wasn't speaking like a CEO anymore. "What do you want?" I looked at him. "I want what I built to be respected," he said. "Family doesn't calculate like this," I answered softly. "In business, everyone is replaceable, remember?" He had no response. Word spread quickly in the industry. Competitors began contacting our clients. Rumors circulated about instability. Minor shareholders started asking questions. Min realized this wasn't internal anymore. This was survival. I didn't shut down the system. I didn't revoke access. I didn't pull the servers. I simply stood still. And when a complex system isn't properly maintained, it reveals its own weaknesses. By the end of the second quarter, financial losses reached $3.8 million. For the first time in company history, cash flow was negative for 2 consecutive months. And they began to understand. I wasn't an employee. I was the foundation. And foundations cannot be replaced with business cards. By the third month, they stopped negotiating price. They started negotiating survival. Min requested a formal meeting, not at the office, at a neutral law firm conference room. No father-son dynamic, no family dinner tone, just documents, just attorneys. Min spoke first. "We're willing to purchase full system rights. No anger, no arrogance left, just pressure." I slid a folder across the table. "I'm not selling it." Silence. David leaned forward. "Then what do you want?" "I want equity restructuring." That got their attention. Not cash, control, I continued calmly. "I'll reinstate full system optimization immediately. I'll stabilize contracts. I'll personally renegotiate the suspended accounts." Min narrowed his eyes. "And in return, 51% operational voting rights." The room went still. My father finally spoke. "That gives you controlling authority." "Yes." I wasn't asking for ownership of the company. I was asking for protection. Operational decisions could no longer bypass the architect. No more sudden transitions. No more cosmetic leadership swaps. Min shook his head. "You're leveraging the company's vulnerability." I met his eyes. "You leveraged my silence for 12 years." My father stood up. For a moment, I thought he would walk out. Instead, he said something different. "If we refuse," I answered evenly, "then I wait." No threat, just math. Cash flow projections didn't favor them. Investors were already nervous. Competitors were circling. They didn't have 6 months. 3 days later, an emergency shareholder meeting was called. Private investors preferred stability over pride. The restructuring passed. 51% operational control transferred. David resigned within the week. I didn't celebrate. I logged into the system, reversed 3 inefficient routing patches, rebuilt warehouse distribution mapping, renegotiated the suspended $4 million contract. Within 6 weeks, losses stabilized. Within 3 months, revenue recovered 18%. Not magic, just architecture restored. We met alone in the warehouse. Same building where I started at 14. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, "You could have destroyed us." I didn't want destruction. Then what did you want? I looked around at the shelves. I wanted to stop being invisible. He nodded once. Not apology, recognition. And sometimes that's more powerful. They said I was replaceable. They were right. Anyone can replace a title, but not the person who understands the structure beneath it. I didn't take revenge. I corrected the balance. Because sometimes you don't need to burn the building. You just need to own the foundation. 3 months after the restructuring, the company had stabilized. The major contract was restored. Cash flow turned positive again. Operational losses were reversed. But there was one thing that hadn't been addressed: recognition. The quarterly shareholder meeting was unusually full. Investors, senior managers, legal advisors. Min stood to present. I didn't know what he was about to say. He didn't start with growth charts. He didn't mention recovery percentages. He didn't talk about projections. He looked at the room. "Before we continue," he said, "there's something I need to address." The room went completely silent. 3 months ago, I supported the decision to replace our COO. He didn't look at me. That was my mistake. No excuses. No blaming advisors. No shifting responsibility. We underestimated the architectural role behind our systems. A pause. And I underestimated my brother. He said it clearly, not quietly, not reluctantly, publicly. No one applauded, but everyone understood what had just happened. This wasn't just an apology. It was credibility shifting. In business, reputation carries more weight than shares. Min continued. This company stands today because of him. For the first time in his life, he said that in front of witnesses. When everyone left, Min stayed behind, just the two of us in the room. "I thought you'd always be there," he said. "Why?" "Because you always were." I looked at him. "That's why you were wrong." He nodded. No defense, no argument, just acceptance. Later that evening, my father didn't talk about numbers. He didn't mention voting rights. He said one sentence. "I got used to seeing you as support," I answered calmly. "I never wanted special treatment. I just didn't want to be invisible." He nodded. And for the first time, he didn't look at me as the backup. He looked at me as an equal. They said I was replaceable. Maybe they were right. Any title can be replaced, but not understanding, not foundation, not the person who built what others stand on. I didn't burn the company down. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped allowing myself to be replaceable. And when I did, they finally understood I was never the extra piece. I was the structure. They said I was replaceable. Maybe they were right. Any title can be replaced, but not understanding, not foundation, not the person who built what others stand on. I didn't burn the company down. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped allowing myself to be replaceable. And when I did, they finally understood I was never the extra piece. I was the structure. You can replace a name, but you can't replace the person who understands how everything works underneath. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been treated as optional, If you've ever built something no one saw, remember this. Real power isn't in the title. It's in the foundation. If you agree with that, comment 1 below.